Hello and welcome to Pale Reflections, a proud member of the Doof Network where we reflect on Wildbow's most triumvirate work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And before we get into today's episode, just quickly, just letting everyone know there's a fan art contest. But if you haven't submitted yet, you're too late because submissions have closed. We're about to start voting, so keep your eyes open for that. There are some excellent submissions.
Yes, so that vote should open within 24 hours of this episode releasing. Yeah, and if that vote will go out to all our patrons. So if you're interested in getting an early sneak peek at the art and getting a say in which one you think deserves the cash prize, head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia. I've been looking at the submissions, getting the post ready for the vote, and holy shit, they're so good.
Yes, I'm excited for the vote. But enough about our Patreon. Let's get into the episode, shall we? We're going to be talking about Out on... sorry. We're going to be talking about Out on a Limb 3.Z, Leaving a Mark 4.1, the 4.1 bonus materials, which is a nice little class schedule, doing some predictions, discussion question answers, and for a little bonus, we'll be going back to Pact. But first, let's start with the aptly titled Out on a Limb 3.Z. And what a 3.Z is.
From the perspective of Z.
Of 3.Z, exactly. 3.Z takes Brie to the next Hungry Choir meetup so that they can work together to take it down a peg.
Yeah, and so obviously this sort of opens with, just two pals on a totally aromantic road trip. Nothing to see here.
My favorite part of this is that we're introduced to this scene with them kind of rehearsing the Hungry Choir song, and Zed's like, "Oh, do we have to sing this?" And Bree's like, "Oh, I'm nervous," and the implication being that she just sings the Hungry Choir song when she's nervous, which I thought was very funny.
Well, I mean, I think it was more she's prepping.
No, I think that she just has it stuck in her head all the time.
Well, I mean, either way, your situation's fucked if your way of calming down or staying focused is to sing that song. Hearing us sort of just choose to sing it, I was like, Brie, what do you?
Yeah.
I mean, overall, I think the opening for this chapter does such a good job at just setting the tone. Obviously, Brie singing the song, at least for me as a reader, was like, oh fuck, here we go. But shit's gonna hit the fan when people are singing the Hungry Choir song. It's raining, which of course, not only is it a dark and stormy night, but even specifically in this story, I associate rain with the ruins, which I then associate with the Hungry Choir's domain. So, that's just the world of Pale sort of working itself into literary tropes. It's just, I think from the first 4 paragraphs where all this setting is being done, you're just like, okay, this is going to be a thing.
Yeah. It's great tone setting, right? I mean, we all kind of knew going in exactly what this interlude was going to be. And so as soon as we know, okay, it's Zed, we know what's going to happen. And so it's kind of playing with our expectation of exactly what this chapter is going to be, which is exactly what it is. This team of practitioners taking down the Hungry Choir. It's great.
Yeah. There's also the great first bit, or the bit where they first see a waif, where there's this kind of thing where it's like Zed sort of ponders on life for a while, and then he thinks, I haven't really seen anything except some animals on the road. And then he goes back to pondering for a while, and then there's just this sudden, there was a child on the road. And just the delivery, it's going to be hard to convey this through audio, but the delivery of how it's pondering a little thing about animals on the road, and then pondering, then suddenly human child on the road.
Yeah,
which of course, well, you start to freak out, and then of course you realize, oh, it's a waif, and so I'm like, well, okay, just accelerate if you're seeing children on the road in this situation, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that was just a great sort of 1-2 punch for getting me in the head of, okay, now we're getting started. The waifs are showing up, and they do it in a dramatic fashion.
Yeah, and it's immediately like, oh, okay, we're here. Shit's about to pop off,
Yep.
Yeah. So the other thing is we finally get to see Rad Ray Sunshine in the flesh. And he's so fun to see. It's this thing of seeing people who are clearly very advanced practitioners just kind of going about their day-to-day routine, and it's such a fun glimpse into the life of a advanced practitioner. I think it's awesome.
And as we start to look forward for the Kenneteers, like I perhaps optimistically hope that they will live long and happy lives. It's interesting to sort of see what other practitioners are like at that stage in their life.
Mm,
Like I can't help but look at everyone, like not really Alexander, but like Rad Ray Sunshine, and think, oh, okay, what does this tell us about what the Kenneteers could look forward to, maybe?
mm, yeah, I think we'll touch on that more
Yeah,
as these sequences of chapters kind of feel like, this chapter to a lesser extent 4.1, but then, obviously right back in with the bonus materials, are talking about what the future of this trio might look like in terms of going to school and becoming a part of this, web
yeah.
of practitioners.
Yes, yeah, we'll definitely be touching on that later. Um,
Yeah.
I also love this like detail that confused me at first, but my understanding of it now is Zed is explaining that this ghost town was cleaned up by other practitioners. So basically something went wrong here, and now when you pass through you think, oh, there's just like two or three buildings left. And that must be some kind of magic, because when the Hungry
Mm,
Choir took them on the turns, suddenly there is actually like a whole town here. So it's kind of like practitioners are keeping it under quarantine, I guess. Like it's a very very loaded word these days, but like that's seems to sort of be what's happening. I mean, is that your understanding? Like, or have I just made that up?
no, I have the same understanding for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it's
definitely.
so cool because it makes the world feel so rich. Like, we're
Yeah.
dealing so much with Kennet, and now here's this sort of whole other town where presumably, I think they said it was 1800s, is so 1 to 200 years ago, it had its own story, and now it's just a
Yeah.
set of ruins. And hopefully, that's not what we're going to be talking about Kennet in 200 years. But
Yeah.
like it's just one of those things that makes the world feel so rich. There's a town here, and it had its whole own story, and now it's a set of ruins.
Yeah, I love the fact that Kennet is one of these towns in the sense that Hungry Choir visits all these ghost towns and Kennet. But oh no, Kennet's definitely different and totally not.
Yeah,
Just another
well, it
example of
is.
a town that went totally to shit. I mean, it is for now, but it really
Yeah,
lends this like really negative aura over it.
it's a good point. Maybe maybe they're in Kennet because of Future Sight. I mean, I don't think that's it, but it would be funny. Um, I I also like as Ray and Brie arrive on the scene. It's funny because we see the other contestants there, and so it hadn't even occurred to me that there would be contestants. Like I got so excited about practitioners fighting the Hungry Choir, I forgot there were going to be eight poor
Mm,
souls mixed in the middle of it. Um,
yeah.
but there's this bit where one of the, and I think it's the kid who later pulls out the gun. He sort of comes up to Brie and he's like, "Oh my god, is it like as powerful as they say?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's actually even more powerful, and I hate it." And it's just like I continue to love how we're exploring this thread in the story of Brie getting what she wanted and being sort of lifted up into this faux celebrity status, and for want of a better term, feeling even less spiritually sound than she was before. Um,
Mm,
and I mean, I think we're going to talk about this even more with Avery in the next chapter, and what she thinks about the little cult that she finds. But
mm.
yeah, I don't know, I don't really have any point I want to make here, but like I continue to find this thread fascinating. Of yes, you're kind of getting what you want, but it turns out that's not what you need. That the Hungry Choir seems to represent for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. These bits of the participants kind of responding to the fact that Brie is here and doesn't seem to, she seems okay, but doesn't seem to be magically fixed is really interesting kind of psychologically. Like imagine what that must do to hear about, oh, if you win this, essentially if you win this lottery, you get your life is magically fixed. And then you see a lottery winner and they're just not happy. And you've put so much of
Yeah.
yourself into entering this lottery. Yeah, rough.
Yeah, well, and like the
Um,
kid doesn't get it, and like I don't really blame him. Like I don't know if Brie would
mm,
have, if like when
yeah,
she was a
of
participant,
course.
like she would have been like, "Oh, I had Pico, like of course I need to do this," and then she sort of gets it. She's like, "Oh, wait, this isn't." I mean, it's fixed her problem, and she says that, but it's not like, "Oh, my life is a okay now." Like, yeah,
Mm, yeah. So yeah, the group kind of starts setting up. Both the participants start setting up their stuff for the night, and the practitioners start setting. And as they set up, Zed and Ray kind of catch up and talk about how they're both doing.
yeah, and we like. Zed in his internal monologue really starts to focus on like how Ray has changed as he's gotten
Mm,
older, and it's not just that he's getting older and that he's getting more ingrained in the system, which is something that came up in our bonus bit last week. But
mm,
he has this like the just history weighing him down. Like there's this stuff with his son Hector, that sounds really tragic. We don't get too many details on it, but it just sounds like it was a disaster. And now you're just sort of sitting here, and it's like, well, it makes me think of what Verona keeps saying. Like, the more time you spend as a human, the more miserable you are. Like, even someone like Ray, who
mm.
seems very chill and well
I mean,
liked and
he's Rad Ray
carefree.
Sunshine. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, nobody seems to particularly hate him. Like, everyone thinks he's rad, or at least, indulges him. Um, so, but even he, like, is a pretty down and scarred person. So, like, you can sort of see where Verona's coming from. Not that her
Yeah.
conclusions are necessarily where I would want someone to go, but like, she's got a point that, like, through life, you gather a bit of suffering.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a lot of Zed's reflections are on, how does Ray, how is Ray feeling now, and how is he kind of deteriorating, right? And it's, yeah, I don't know. It is a bit sad. Like Zed, you get this vibe of Ray as this kind of really ground down kind of person, someone who's was initially set up and defined themselves as Rad Ray Sunshine, and then as
Yeah.
time has gone on, that's kind of become this facade that he doesn't really live up to anymore.
Yeah.
Which is very, very on point for the for the 80s Technomancer vibe, but also kind of sad, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, there's this other moment that I really liked where Ray is basically doing the equivalent of a parent kind of checking in on their partner's their child's new partner in
Yeah.
respect to Brie, which I thought was very adorable.
Yeah, I agree. Um, Zed has this moment a bit later where he feels a bit bad about thinking of himself as Ray's son. Um, but like, I don't know, if you have like someone who's your apprentice for many years, or like someone who was like a mentor as you're growing up, I feel like you develop that kind of not parental bond, but one that's not dissimilar.
Mm,
Like, I don't know, I can think of people who were, heavily involved in shaping me, like, as I was growing up, and I they would have done the same sort of thing. Like, they're not your parents, but there's similarities there, I guess. Like, and I think that just sort of happens if you're helping to shape who someone grows into.
mm, yeah, yeah, definitely. I I just love being in Zed's head, I think. Like Zed is
Yeah.
clearly very clever, but also very good at like reading people and responding to emotions and that stuff, but also aware enough of his own thought processes to act in a very kind of measured, good way. And obviously, as somebody who deals with like cursed objects, there's always a bit of a trade-off in what Zed chooses to kind of use in any scenario. And just the fact that they are so, I mean, they don't even seem like exceptionally like skilled or talented or anything, but they're just kind of very competent. He's very like aware of his own train of thoughts and just stuff that is, I find, really compelling in a perspective character. I think it's great.
Yeah, like the moment I assume you're sort of referencing here is that bit where he draws on his therapy to decide like which items
Mm,
he's going to take. And I mean, I kind of hated that moment because he decided not to take the cool gun. Even though like, yeah, that was the right decision, I suppose. But you're right. There's a real like emotional maturity and level of empathy to Zed that even extends around to himself thanks to the therapy. Um,
mm,
it's really cool. And then yeah, like he's so knowledgeable compared to most of the headspaces we've been in so far. So we get all this cool exposition scattered throughout the chapter just on not only what's happening here, but like the wider practitioner world.
yeah.
And then also, as you said, like he dresses in like 50s style. His site is like neon lights. Like
Yes.
he's a fucking champ.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, so good, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, Rad Ray sets up this kind of teleporter light show, which pulls in the rest of the group, which is a gang of practitioners that are all here to help deal with the hungry choir.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of like camera flash based laser teleportation is peak like shitty 60s sci-fi TV. I'm so here for it. Like I guess as I said, we touched so much on all the various things in the world like Zed goes on this whole thing about like technomancy and where it fits into things. Like I love that he sort of clarifies for us that the patterns in this world that matter aren't just patterns, but it's specifically like human patterns, ones that humans associate meaning with. So
Mm,
technomancy is actually not that great because it's not just about patterns. You can't have a machine do things a million times because a human doesn't care about it, and the machines can't yet. Maybe
yeah.
I wonder where AI. Anyway, let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Let's not get in that
Um,
deep. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting, and like I think technomancy is such an interesting thing to explore because as it starts to touch on here, like technology has changed how we interact with the world. Like Zed talks about how it's made it smaller, but I think the way we communicate and like with people around the globe and sort of empathize with completely alien perspectives has been
Mm,
fundamentally changed by the internet for some of us. Um, and I feel like that ties into all this like justice and peace and understanding other people's perspectives, things that this story is dealing with pretty head on.
mm, yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of it's interesting because it's very, I guess, other versy in the way that these themes that are floating around. I mean, we've kind of put a pin in the theme of justice and injustice as one of the major things that is being discussed here. But then there's also these other themes that are really demonstrated just through like the nature of some of these practices and the way it works. Like, even down to the fact that we get in this chapter this character who basically yells these primeval beasts into reality, which is just on one hand a very cool power, but on the other
Yeah.
hand has the potential to explore all these questions of like humanity and what's human and the autonomy of others and the injustice within that. Like it can kind of hint towards these themes as well, and it's just great how effective this story is at doing that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that insanity a bit later that you just referenced, but yeah, like I agree. Like, I'd say two of the things that I feel like this story is talking about like the most are sort of like justice, justice and punishment on one hand, then like disparity or privileges on the other. And I think these are
Mm,
both things that conversations around have changed fundamentally in the past, or however many years, depending on where you want to draw the line. But like because of technology, like this is the sort of thing that the world's become smaller, and that means that like this sort of stuff is more in the fore because we can see it. And so I think it makes sense for the story to dip into talking about that, and of course it's doing it through technomancy, like just sort of bringing the technology into the magic metaphor in a really fun way.
yeah. Side note here. So there's a character who comes up who has a familiar whose name is Schwarzmugel. And of course, when we find a name that's that bizarre, we have to look it up and
You
see
have
what
to.
it's trying to say. And I was Googling it and I literally couldn't find anything except what was some kind of fan fiction that I didn't really understand. So seemingly this is a name that exists out there somewhere, but I couldn't find any reference to it or like meanings behind it.
Weirdly, I found most of my hits were for name websites that had no information on it.
Mm.
I I mean, I found it used as an example. Like I almost felt like it was a saying or a meme of like, if you're trying to come up with the worst name for someone, Schatzmugel was like there was one, it was like a blog post about by some person who was talking about their ex-boyfriend and they named him Schatzmugel in the examples, like as the sort of
Yes.
anonymous name. Um so yeah, I even tried translating it from German to English because it felt Germanic to me. Yeah, couldn't find anything. If anyone has any more information on the origin of Schatzmugel, like let us know because it feels like something, but I couldn't quite find a link that I felt confident in saying this is like a reference that's being deliberately made.
Mm. Um, yeah. I couldn't find anything about it, so I don't know. Whatever. Well,
Yeah.
maybe we'll get a comment from a user that's like, "Oh no, actually, Schatzmugel was some 16th century prince, and here's what it means." But I have no idea. I tried to look for that kind of stuff and couldn't find it.
Yeah. I feel like something we should do, and have I already said this? Did I say this a few weeks ago? I feel like we should do a really big like name game type thing.
Mm,
But like we haven't been doing name game, and there's so many good ones. I mean, like
mm.
just or on the topic, like Brie as a name.
Because
For
it's a cheese that gets eaten
yeah,
and she
exactly.
eats
Like
things. Hmm.
there's so many clever and cool names in this story, and we probably should be giving them like actual call outs.
Yeah.
Add that to extra material or bonus bit ideas.
Yeah, fair enough. I want to touch on something here, which is we've the story is obviously this chapter kind of been dealing with the fact that Miss is gone now, and the rift between the Kennetiers and the Kennet others is just growing and growing. And
Right.
this chapter kind of sets up the fact that there's this group of practitioners that all know each other and are all like friendly with each other. And yes, they've got some certified creeps like Chase and Alex Belanger, but then we also have Zed and Nicolette who have this very like nice moment between each other. Like there's clearly a positive set of like relationships here as well as some of the shitty ones like Alex or Chase, right?
Yeah.
And it makes me think that this is now starting to set up, this chapter specifically is starting to set up, and show us what it looks like when we transition from the Kennetiers mainly hanging around with the Kennet others to the Kennetiers hanging around with other practitioners as they kind of get into the Blue Heron Institute, right? Which is fine narratively, but it does make me sad that we're not really gonna, we're not really gonna. Oh, it seems like we're moving away from the Kennet others. And the other thing I noticed here is this is our third interlude chapter, and none of them have been like all the interlude chapters have been from the perspective of like other humans. I mean, we had
Yeah.
Nicolette, we had
Good
Zed.
point.
We haven't ever been inside, John's head, for example. And maybe that is just because if we were, we would find out that he actually murdered the Carmine Beast or whatever. But like maybe it's structurally so that they can't rule out a suspect. But I do think it's sad that this story seems to be setting up this divide of like humans v others and nudging us more and more towards the side of the humans.
Mm. Yeah, I hadn't noticed. You're right. They're like the closest we've had to an other chapter would be all the Verona one.
I mean, we had, Snowdrop has kind of been a focal point of some parts of some chapters, and maybe that kind of
Yeah.
counts. But
Nah.
yeah,
I,
exactly.
I think you're right. Like, I mean, because I definitely there's one moment where Zed is sort of like when he's calling out Yolda, and he's sort of like, "By the laws of man, like I demand you come out." And that was like this little bit where I was like, that's weird." I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that phrasing. Um,
Mm,
like just because I feel like this story has set up this metaphor of a lot of the others being kind of the on the poor end of things, like the people without the power. And so then to see
mm,
Zed kind of walking around wielding like by the power of man, I was a bit like, oh, I don't like this. um yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if we'll fully leave the Kennet others for too long, but
mm,
seeing the Kennetiers get more embroiled in the human side of things will certainly, like you're right. There's nothing to imply that the rest of these human practitioners value others in any sort of extreme way, and it'd be interesting to see how much that kind of rubs off on the Kennetiers at all.
yeah, yeah. I am kind of worried. Like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it really does feel like as the relationship with the Kennet others degrades, we're seeing, like, okay. So the other thing that we noticed in this chapter is we see that there's these very human and like kind moments between Zed and Nicolette, and they're clearly good friends.
Yeah,
And both of these characters, I mean, Zed, I think I have no qualms about absolutely getting behind. Nicolette is a little bit more prickly because of how she's acted in the past, but in general, you can kind of empathize with her and at least respect her to an
yeah.
extent,
I
right?
was pretty on board with her. I kind of saw her as someone in a shit spot who ended up on the wrong
Yeah,
side of things, but I was willing to forgive her a bit because of how much Alexander felt like he was driving that ship.
yes, for sure. And both of them have an interaction with each other where it's clearly positive and healthy friendship. And they're both kind of like, oh, I'm excited about the new semester, which obviously is code for I'm excited to meet the Kennetiers again, right?
Yeah, it's a really
Um,
fun moment where it's like, "Oh, yeah, the Hungry Choir," and it's like, "Oh, I couldn't talk about
yes,
that." I am interested
yes.
in the new students, though. Oh, yes,
It's
me
so
too.
fun,
Like,
right? It's the kind of fun shit that really is like, it feels like it's setting up. There's going to be this big group of friends where it's Zed and Nicolette and the Kennetiers when they get to the Blue Heron Institute. And I'm clearly very excited for that to happen because I think it's going to be great. But I'm also sad that that is seemingly at the cost of positive relationships with the Kennet others, who I do think have got a bit shafted in terms of like the dynamics of power that seem to exist.
yeah, well, I think that'll probably just be a sort of story point if that happens, because basically the Kenneteer is making cases for others more, like might sort of, they they might be the Blue Heron Institute version of like social justice warriors or something. You know, like
Mm,
maybe that'll sort of be things. Everyone will be trying to get them to value others less, and
yeah,
maybe even within the group there'll be sort of conflict on how much they should do that. I don't know.
yeah.
Like I could see that sort of being a thing that's happening throughout their time there.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that too. That would be pretty cool. We'll see. We'll have to see how it goes.
Also, just a side note, as we're rounding up our coverage of this crew who's arrived, there's that
Mm.
Eloise woman who
Hmm.
I think she's just Ulysses's fiance or whatever, but she's got a really cool aesthetic. Like I can get behind a creepy centipede that crawls over you and does tattoos and stuff. Like
It
10
was
out of 10.
weird, right? God, creepy. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I okay. I want to touch on another quick thing here is the fucking Chekhov's licorice that plays off here, where we get these beats of like, oh, remember to take your licorice, or like Zed grabbed the bag of licorice, and I'm like, obviously the reaction to that is, what the fuck does this
Yeah,
licorice have to
what's
do
up
with
with this
anything?
licorice?
Exactly, right? And then it pays off in a pretty great way when we find out what it's for, that it's kind of protecting Brie. And then that is kind of plays into the resolution of this whole thing in a way
Yeah.
that's so good. And it all comes from this Chekhov's licorice, which I think is so awesome.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the ending when it comes up. But I agree. Like during my live read, I had all this fucking speculation about what kind of magical licorice it was. Like I assumed it,
Yeah.
I assumed it was one of Zed's like cursed items, right? And I was
Yes,
trying to
of
figure out
course.
what power the licorice had in it. And it's like, no, it's just like she's just walking around with fucking giant sticks of licorice, like munching on them.
Hmm.
also just a hilarious image. Like it's a
Hmm.
ridiculous thing to be eating in this scenario without the context.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Uh,
So yes, the ritual is fast approaching, and so the practitioners are kind of starting to make their play. They set up defenses and they call out Yolda, and she does not want to play ball with them. Things almost immediately go bad, and Yolda quite quickly starts to work her way through their defenses.
Yeah, I mean, and this is just like this fight scene is so fantastic. Like the fucking hordes of waif zombies that are like climbing up the barrier. It reminds
Mm.
me of that scene from World War Z. You know, where they're in Jerusalem and there's like the
Oh
big
yeah, and
wall.
they're climbing up the wall. Yeah,
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 like I don't know. Like I think World War Z is not the perfect movie, but I like just love the sort of the way that the bodies of the zombies always felt like waves, like the
yeah.
imagery that movie captured, and that was just what I was picturing with these waves, like just actual waves of like zombie children fucking clawing at this invisible barrier. It was like I need a visual adaptation of this. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. For based on what happens at the end of this chapter, I'm not sure that I want a visual adaptation
Oh yeah, good
of a
point.
woman eating a child. But
I
yeah.
doubly want a visual.
Okay. Sure.
um,
Sure. Sure.
yeah, I mean, there's also a bit just before the fight kicks off where Zed starts to like outline the plan, and then he has to stop because there's like a bunch of waifs watching, and I just loved that as like a diegetic way to hide the plan from us. Like it was that thing. It's like, okay,
Mm.
now let's go over the plan. Oh no, they're right there. Okay, we went over the plan before. We can wait, and I was like, oh god damn it, I can't even be mad about this.
I don't know what their plan. Like their plan seemed to just be chuck everything in Yelda and hope that it's enough, and that plan does not work.
No, I think the plan was always to get Brie to do her thing. I think it was
Do
like
you
the rest of
think?
them. Yeah, I'm. My understanding is that the plan was we try to keep Yulda busy until Brie and get Brie close enough, and Brie
Mm.
ends up having to do like all of the work, because she's sort of immune. But like, I don't think the plan was to get like fucked up by the zombies quite as quickly as they did. But I think the plan was always stall until we can get Brie near Yulda to get her to eat her.
Mm.
And because there's all this great talk, like Zed's like, now the plan is to like, make the metaphorical snake eat its own tail, and
Mm.
stuff like that, which of course, I didn't think was going to happen as literally as it did.
Yeah. I want to touch on. I think something that I've kind of started to put my finger on more is something that I love about this universe is how kind of constantly disgusting the practice is. Like there are some bits that are kind of, I guess there are some parts that are more slick, but mostly it's all very like raw and human, right? Like Mrs. Durocher, whose ability is to kind of grunt and scream a monster into existence, is a cool power, but also it's horrifying, right? And I feel like that just adds to the kind of visceral uh excitement and fear that this story is able to build. It's great.
Yeah, because like well, she doesn't just do this weird guttural scream. Doesn't she actually start like cutting into her own throat with her fingernails, and she's like bleeding from her throat as she continues to dig into her own throat and scream? Um,
Y-
it's incredibly fucked up, and I loved
Yes.
it. Um,
I mean, but they're all like this, right? That's the
yeah.
thing.
Well, like, yeah, you're right. I think it makes it feel so much more intense and real because it's like, they're not just standing in the background waving wands. Right? Like, people are putting themselves into these fights with, like, in really physical ways and in ways that hurt them. Like, like just kind of waving your wand and having like an energy bar. It's just like, it just becomes like a numbers game. It's like, oh no, I've run out of spell slots. Like, oh no. Whereas like these people, it's
Mhm.
like, oh, I've
Yeah.
run out of like places to
Throat.
stab myself to summon a goblin, right? Like
Yeah.
it's so much. The fact that every action is that much more like physical and intense, I think it makes every action feel more important and have more weight behind it.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, so good.
Um, and wait, so speaking of, what the fuck was that thing that Miss Durachet summoned? Like, I tried googling for like twig alive things. Like, it's described as like being looking like it's part tree, part alive. Like, I couldn't. I don't know what this was meant to be. It's so bonkers.
I think it's what was the word? It's like it's a I saw a Reddit comment about it. It was either called a primeval or a primordial, and I'm not sure which it is, but it's a kind of
I'm
like
familiar with that.
pre-animalistic thing.
Yeah, I wonder what mythology that's from. I don't know.
I am not sure. I cannot
We'll have to try and do a monster corner on it at some point. If
recall.
you've got an actual word we can use to start a
It's
productive
one of
Google
those
search.
two. I'm pretty sure it's one of those two.
Yeah,
Pop it in
interesting.
the comments, folks. I remember there was a Reddit comment that was diving into it. Anyway,
Um,
anyway.
yeah. Just while we're on cool uses of the practice here, a slightly more clean one, like the Scratcher sketch. Um, I just love as a tool, like just on every level, but especially like it draws big diagrams from little ones. I was like, that's so useful.
hmm
And that's so technology as well, like taking something and making it easier for you to do, like automating part of the process. Like I loved everything about the Scratcher sketch.
Yeah.
Like that must be one of Zed's most powerful tools,
It's
or just from a versatility standpoint, anyway.
it's classic technomancer stuff, right? Like taking a weird piece of old technology and finding a cool way to make it useful. So yes,
Yeah, exactly.
Yolda manages to break through their defenses, basically reformatting one of their diagrams to become her own, which is terrifying. And she basically pulls them into the ritual. So we have the inner ritual with the 8 regular participants, and another ritual running with the practitioners, excluding Ray and Brie.
Yeah, I mean it's a great like oh shit moment because it goes from like oh we're getting attacked by the zombies to like no she's not going to kill you that quick because you're doing the ritual.
Yep.
Yeah, I loved this as a okay here we fucking go.
Yeah, it sets it up as this huge clusterfuck, right? Like suddenly the
Yep.
animals come out and it's snakes, and that's clearly so like toxic. It's all horrifying and it's great.
And it's not just snakes, it's fucking like it's raining snakes was the impression I
hmm
had. Like
They're literally
this is making the snake bit from Indiana Jones look barren was sort of the impression I had. Yeah, so then now you're drowning in snakes as well as zombies. Like you're right. It just God, what a moment for like, okay, now we're in trouble.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, it's pretty rough. There's snakes all over the place. Everyone's basically getting eaten alive by snakes and waifs, which is a fun little role reversal. Before Bree manages to turn the turn the tables. Bree and Zed kind of work their way through the crowd of waifs. God, so many confusing words in this story. Bree and Zed work their way through the crowd of waifs to Yolda, and Bree claims her meal.
Yeah, good thing Zed got that kiss in while she still tasted like candy from the road trip.
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
Um, I I actually want to pull out the quote, like the bit where Brie starts eating him, because it's so good. So like Zed has not been singing all the lines of the song. And in fact, just so on our Discord pointed out that like some of them are actually quite binding, which was something I hadn't even considered. Like practitioners have to
Mm,
be careful which lines they sing, because there's
mm,
one where it's like if a single meal I miss, then I shall be but skin and bone, which like practitioners shouldn't be singing that. That sounds awful. Um,
mm,
but so Zed sort of had these moments where he's had to let himself get bit to skip lines, and Yolda was kind of smiling menacingly at him as it happens. And then as Yolda's sort of just looking to get away, the text goes, Brie pushed forward, licorice falling from her lips. She grabbed Yolda. The girl looked up at her, and Brie bit. A song for your supper, Zed sang. Brie bit again, then again. And like
mhm.
I just like bringing the song in as a slam right there. Like I know Zed had to sing it anyway, but like I love that as a like kill line. It was so
Mhm.
good.
Ah, yeah, it's pretty wild, right? The setup with the licorice, Brie not being able to be prevented from eating, and then when Zed kind of reveals the prestige, I guess. Um, it's yeah, it's brutal. Yeah, I don't know if I think it was the plan all along, but regardless, it's pretty amazing, right?
It's
It just works so well.
it's such a good moment. Like I've just been calling this resolution perfect because I can't
Mm,
get over it. Like it's so simple, but it's so fair. Like that's like when it started happening, the second she started biting her, I was like, of course, because like she can't yeah, but like I don't think anyone predicted it before this chapter started, as far as I know. Um,
mm,
it's so simple in retrospect. It's so obvious you don't see it coming.
mm.
Like I couldn't get over how perfect the delivery and just the concept of this idea for killing the hungry choir was. Like I think we've had this how do you beat the hungry choir question looming over us since arc one, and just to
Such
have
a
it,
simple answer. You eat it, of
yeah,
course.
you get one of the winners to just eat it. Like I'd not hesitate to call this like a perfect resolution to this whole thing, because I loved everything about it.
Mm, yeah, isn't it great? So good. Yeah, so they've beaten THC, which is great. Zed dials the Kenneteers and they do their final interview. The final
Yes.
interview of a Kennet other, where they finally get the chance to interview the Hungry Choir.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm just dumb and didn't understand it the last few chapters, but I hadn't actually understood that what the Kenneteers wanted here was to interview Yolda. So that worked as a bit of a reveal for me. I was like, oh yeah, obviously. I thought they
Mm.
wanted to ask Zed questions for some reason. I don't know what I was, but
I mean, I'm sure they have questions for him too.
but yeah, my favorite thing about this interview is the fact that Bree is continuing to eat Yolda as it's going on, which is
Mm,
just insane. Like I can't.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Also.
For,
Um.
sorry, wait. She's not just eating her through this interview. It's for 4.5
Yes.
hours
Yes.
after this as well.
We'll get to that
She
as well.
spends about 5 hours eating a child here, and there's another guy who's just with her, like smushing up bones into bite-sized pieces.
Yeah, I want to get to that as well, because you're right. Like that's hilarious. But just the idea, like to me, that's a whole different crazy energy to the Kenneteers on the phone interviewing Yolda and her giving calm answers as she's being eaten.
Yeah,
Like it's such an insane image. But I love
yeah.
this bit where the Kenneteers ask for privacy, and Zed's like, "Oh, it's going to be hard," and Lucy's just kind of like, "Not our
That's
problem.
your
Like,
problem.
sort
Yeah,
it out." And
that
Nicolette
sounds
has
like
this,
a Zed problem to me.
yeah, exactly. And Nicolette is just like, kind of like her. Um,
Mm,
which is like, because this is whole like Lucy's whole thing of like she puts on like this prickly exterior because she assumes good people see past it. And so I'm already kind of like, oh, maybe they can forgive Nicolette for that, little trying to kill Avery business that happened. Um, and they can get on board with like, being friends with Zed and Nicolette. I know
mm.
this is a moment where if we're talking about the school dynamic being an important part of the latter end of the story, this is like a moment where I'm like, oh, I have hope.
Fair enough. There can be hope. Yeah. Um, should we talk about the clues that we get from Yolda?
Yeah.
So direct confirmation, yes, Yolda was the murder weapon. Okay. Yolda says there were a male and female there. They were masked, and the man moved like he was older, but he wasn't old.
Yeah, which feels like it's meant to imply Charles to the
Yes, I
point
think.
where it's so obvious I don't trust it.
Yeah, it does seem a little too much, especially with some of the things that happen in this conversation with Zed, where Zed's like, "Oh yeah, you'd need to be someone who could, like, I don't know, make others or something." Like, oh, but that's crazy. Who could do that? And obviously, it's so clearly meant to be suggesting Charles to you that I was kind of like, all right, so it's maybe not Charles after all.
Yeah, I
We're
mean,
falling into the classic trap of always thinking it's Charles because the universe hates him.
yeah, I mean, it could be like Matthew.
Hmm.
He doesn't move as well anymore. That's a beat we've hit a bunch.
Hmm.
I think I saw someone. It might have been in Pale Predictor. Someone suggested that it was Marisica in Glamour.
Yes, I saw that
Um,
one. Risika glamoured up to look like Charles.
yeah.
Classic.
So like, there's all sorts of things here, and you can never know in this world, but yeah, like it definitely feels like we're sort of meant to start taking from this. Okay, this was like I don't know why, but I saw myself and a bunch of other people have just sort of assumed the woman is Edith for basically no reason. And then who knows who the man was?
Mm, yeah, we'll see. And sorry, a brief note while we're discussing theories, just a brief intermission from that to note that Alexander Belanger had a child shoot himself in the head with a gun. That's a thing that happens in this story. Alexander's just like, up, boop, 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 waves his magic wand, and a kid just shoots himself in the head with a
And he
gun. So
doesn't even give a fucking shit
he
at all.
doesn't.
Like
That's pretty
Nicolette
fucked up.
Nicolette has the humanity to be like, oh, and look away.
Yeah.
Alexander's just like, did what had to be done. I feel like this moment for me, like, because it caught me off guard when it happened, right? Because it's like, okay, we've finished with the Hungry Choir, and
Mm,
then suddenly this kid comes in with a gun. And I was like, oh, what the fuck? And then he just sort of shoots himself in the head, thanks to Alexander.
hmm.
And for a moment, I was like, well, why did we do any of that? But I feel like it's to reinforce, in case the fact that Brie is like shamefully eating a girl alive. In case that wasn't enough to make you think this isn't a clean victory, I think we just got this added layer of, oh yeah, we made a kid shoot himself in the face.
Hmm.
Um,
Mm, mm,
yeah, like
yeah.
there's just this isn't. I don't think you're meant to walk away from this being like, fuck yeah, easy victory over the Hungry Choir. Like there's some dirtiness to this win.
Yeah, it's not, yeah, exactly. It's not a clean victory, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, seeing Alexander, like, okay, look, I hate the guy. He's a
Of
piece of
course.
shit. But
Mm,
watching him in action is kind of cool. Like the way the centipede girl was like disrupting connections was the impression I got from what she was doing with the centipede. And Alexander kind of combos with her to make it so the connections aren't just being disrupted, but they become violent and strifey. Uh,
mm,
yeah, cool
mm.
practice, shit person.
Yeah, somebody that we're clearly going to see more of coming up soon
I
because that's
imagine so.
his institute.
And so then
Yeah.
the last moment of this interview we need to touch on because God, it caught me off guard. So there's basically this moment where it's like you have one more question, just after we've sort of learnt about this stuff, and the trio, rather than asking for more details on these murderers, are just like, "Is there anything you want us to pass on to John?" Which like I legit started tearing up when I read that. I did not expect something like that. I was expecting, like, I was totally in. We've got to get more clues mode. Um, like I just the Kenneteers, they're such good people. Like what a champion trio. Like taking the time to use their last question to give Yolder a bit of like a human moment, for want of a better word, is just so nice.
Mm, mm, yeah. Yeah, it is, isn't it? And I mean, I don't give a shit about it for Yoda, but I'm sure it will mean something to John when they tell him.
I care about it for Yolder as well. I feel like she got a pretty short end of the stick of life.
Yeah, I suppose.
Like she got crafted into this thing, and she was crafted by the universe into like a thing of famine and suffering. Like I don't know. I feel bad for her, and I feel like this is like this moment where the Kenneteers are just sort of talking about John as Yolder essentially dies. Is a
Mm,
surprisingly beautiful moment. Like
mm,
surprising in the
mm.
sense that I just didn't expect to have that sort of moment at the end of this chapter.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, so, so this is where Zed and the others go to get medical treatment. Of course, leaving Brie to her meal for 4.5 hours. Um,
I can't with this story. It's
yeah,
so like The bit where you find out he's like, "Oh, I've been gone for 4.5 hours," and I think Zed says it like twice in the narration. I'm kind of like, "God, why do we care?" And it's like he came back, and and Brie is still eating, and I was like, "Oh my god,
Yeah, and she says something like, "I thought you were gonna leave me," and I'm like,
oh,
"Oh,
it's so
Brie,
tragic."
no." Yeah,
But because she's so, I mean, that's like a thing that sort of keeps happening. She's like so ashamed of what's happening
mm,
because she's eating a young girl alive essentially. Um, and everyone's just kind of like, "No, you're a champ." Which for someone who had an eating disorder, I can see why she's like struggling to comprehend that. Like I have an eating disorder, but also like now I'm eating a young girl alive. Like you can see why she's sort of getting upset by this. And why it
mm,
takes a lot from the others to undo it. But
mhm, yeah.
yeah.
I've really, really come around to Brie, in the sense that, obviously, Brie is the reason that Reagan is dead, and I'm really sad about that because I really liked Reagan, but damn, Brie has really won me over. Like this, she's so great. She's so great.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, I couldn't put it any better than Zed, who gives her mucho cred.
Yeah.
And then
Um,
we sort of end the chapter on this note that Zed is very interested in our trio and where they will go from here. And I mean, obviously, us too, very excited to see where they go from here. But we don't have to wait.
Yep. Um, so yeah, let's see what our trio does next. I guess with 4.1, leaving a mark 4.1. Should we touch on leaving a mark as a chapter title? What do you think this is referring to, Elliot?
I mean, it might be too early to say. I think it's going to be the maybe the Kenneteers on Kennet. I don't know.
Mm,
Well, we should maybe save it for our reflections episode coming out in a few days.
that's true. It's a fair point. Good place to plug that we have a reflections episode. We'll be reflecting on Arc 3 coming out soon. So, yes, let's start with Leaving a Mark 4.1, where Avery begins by going to visit a cult.
Yeah, but maybe a kind of good cult. I don't know. I think we're going to have this argument a bit based on what I read in the notes. Um, I,
Well,
I
I think there's no way that you can trust first impressions in this universe. I guess is the
That's fair.
crux of my argument about this.
That's fair, but it's a mistake I will continue to make. Thank you very much. Um,
Yeah.
I
But yeah,
I think
mm.
sorry, I just want to bring up one question before you dive into it. So is this like a bit of a time skip? Because I swear, and I went back and looked at the calendar we got early in Arc 3. I don't think we should be anywhere near this party yet, unless I misunderstood things.
Yeah, we've definitely jumped ahead a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
For sure. Anywho, so yes,
Sorry. Yeah.
we jump into this chapter, and it's obviously we don't really know what's going on at the start. Avery bumps into this woman, and there's clearly some weird, creepy thing going on. We don't really know what. Yeah, it's a good start. It's a good kind of compelling, strange uh, beginning to a new arc.
Yeah, it's a fun sort of in media res moment. Um, my first guess as I was reading it, I actually thought Avery was on a path, and I started wait, this girl tried to give her the apple, and she said she had to say no, and I was like, oh, okay, is this some sort of Adam and Eve, Pandora, like mythology path type thing? Turns out I was a bit early for the path speculation stuff, but like I think that's maybe part of like the mystery that was sort of thrown into here.
Mm, yeah. Now here's something. Avery is talking to this woman that she finds, and basically it comes out that it seems like this woman has been here since she was 12, which is obviously a bit worrying, especially since that's the same age as Avery in the trio, which is kind of like, oh,
Yeah, there's
something funky is going on here. Avery puts her finger on it later when she says, "I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't tell Verona about this place."
Yeah,
Mm.
it's interesting. There's also a 6-year-old girl mentioned at one point. So you can get into this cult pretty early. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting the bit about telling Verona because I looked at this place and I was like, I don't know if this is Verona's cup of tea. For starters, everything is like bright and white, which does not suit Verona's like I am the knight aesthetic.
Yeah.
But I guess it does sort of provide evidence for like leaving humanity can be a good thing. But something I wanted to bring up here. So we obviously meet a bit more of our three remaining judges, and
Mm.
like, have I missed it or forgotten? Or like, we still don't sort of explicitly know what the domains of each of these three are, right? Like,
Yes.
there was the interview with Matthew and Edith, which I think gave us a lot more of an idea. Like, Aurum seems to be something to do with society because I think they said it was a
Mhm,
city related thing.
mhm,
The Alabaster, um, especially after today, seems to be around like innocence.
mhm,
And then Sable, the black one, obviously death. There's
mhm.
probably like a bit more nuance and intricacy to it than that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, like if those three are right, that sort of means okay, so you have like civilization or whatever it's called, and then you've got innocence for white, and then you've got like death and violence. Like, what does it say about this world that you need death and violence as separate entities? Like, like that makes up 50% of what needs dealing with.
Mm, mm, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. We don't have a clear picture of what these ones are. We get more understanding in this chapter of what the Carmine Beast is, right? And
Yeah,
it also like I don't know if it was just me, but I felt like I wasn't quite fully following. Like it felt like it was vague, intentionally vague, right? We get the Carmine Beast as as it's described, the thing that kind of makes men remember what it's like to be hunted in the night, basically. Um,
yeah. I mean, the bit I latched onto was that she was an animus, which are these sorts of like, well, they compared like directly to John as sort of things that manifest to as an action. So it's like a ritual incarnate, but it's an incarnation of like doing something.
mm,
And I mean, like I feel like there's got to be something there because we had the animus librarian in the extra material last week that Zed have. And then there's also in the extra material this week, there's a class listed as dealing with anima and animus, which are those subconscious Jungian psychology things. I think we briefly touched on last week. Um,
yes.
so it feels like what an animus is maybe will be something that's important.
Mm,
Because
mm,
that's sort of three references to them now.
mm.
But I agree. All we sort of know about the Carmine Beast at this point is it was some bestial incarnation thing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I wonder whether our not knowing much, and this is maybe being a bit more tinfoily again, but I wonder whether our not knowing much about these judges is like a hint that a narrative, sorry, an out of narrative hint that there might be something else going on here. Like, if we find out more about them, we might learn that one of them's a murderer or whatever, obviously, not something that obvious and blunt, but something that kind of ties them more explicitly into this mystery in a way that they haven't really been tied in yet.
Yeah, maybe like I think they've said they didn't do it, but like maybe one of them knew what was happening and did nothing about it.
Mm,
I can't remember enough about the specifics of their first appearance to know if that's been ruled out or not. Yeah. I don't know. They do seem to be these sort of unknowable figures. But maybe that's just them. Like maybe you are tinfoiling. Maybe it's just like they are to some extent unknowable.
mm. Yeah, and maybe that's what it's meant to be. Maybe we're not like maybe it's impossible to know more about them, and that's the kind of the vibe that we're meant to get from them,
Yeah,
I
there's a
suppose.
there's a mystique.
Mm,
Sorry, just to jump back a little bit. We talked about like how Avery says she doesn't want to introduce this cult to Verona. I think it's also probably even more important though that Avery looks at it and decides she doesn't want to because, like, as she sort of says on paper, this is a lot of what she wants. Like, everyone's
yeah.
nice, they're taking care of each other. Like, you can leave. That's like I think an important aspect to this place. But there's a hollowness to it that she notes that reminds me a bit of what Brie was talking about. Like there's a sort of fakeness to it, and I know Avery is like a bit glamoured up these days to the point where like it sort of tarnishes any potential character growth in general. But like I sort of looked at this and was like, oh, this is like a good sign that Avery is not just holding these goals of like company and niceness on a pedestal now, but she's sort of looking at them more critically and saying like, what do I actually want?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it's good, right? I
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of joked about Avery not telling Verona about the thing, but I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that problematic. I think it's good that they are all three of them as a trio. I think are becoming now that they've kind of gotten over the initial shock of being in the world. They are more critically evaluating the paths before them. I think, and even Verona,
Yeah.
we've seen kind of mature her train of thought about how she's going to turn into another. So I'm with you.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a little beat where Snowdrop here notes that this might be a useful place for Louise, which I think is because
Mm.
of all the talk of like recovery from addiction and kind of sanctuary that this place literally provides to the people that are here. But yeah, I could see that. I do think though, and this is kind of what we were touching on before, I do think there's more horrifying stuff going on than we aren't seeing right now.
I choose to believe that it's just the sort of hollow, empty thing that we're seeing. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think like if there is any benefit to this place, Louise feels like a candidate to me as well. I think Snowdrop nailed it. Like Louise needs to be taken away from society and temptation to be able to deal because I remember from 0.0, like she's knowingly shit at taking care of herself. Like she was
Mm,
fucking falling apart from diabetes and everything, so she limited herself to like a couple of cigarettes a day or something. Like she just, she needs to be in a place like this to find a balance. I would imagine
mm.
if the alabaster would let her in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the metric for letting people into this place is, so who the fuck knows?
Yeah, it would probably depend on where Louise's head is at about wanting to get better. I imagine.
Mm, yeah. Um, yeah. So the judges, including the alabaster deer, show up, and Avery kind of starts talking them through what the trio has found so far.
Yeah, I mean Avery kicks butt here. Like I love how they're like, oh, you were softer last time you came here, and she's like, yeah, fair. Like she's so casual with them, in a way that like felt very un Arc One Avery. Like you saw
Yes,
the bit where there's
she's
the bit
mellowed out in a good way, hasn't she?
Yeah, like there's the bit where they're like, "Oh, you have to know yourself." I can't remember the exact context, but like Avery's just like, "Yeah, knowing yourself is hard," and they're like, "Yeah, yeah, it is." It's just like the sort of thing I don't think Avery would have had the confidence to say a couple of arcs ago. I hope it's not all glamour, but speaking of like the roles these ones would play, something I noticed on my second read through is the Sable Prince. Only ever speaks up when they're talking about how things could go wrong. Like
Mm,
if he is meant to represent death, like I think it's funny that it's like every time he speaks up is when it's sort of like, oh, oh, if you want to protect your role in Kennet, you could swear an oath that you'll come back. And Avery's like, but what if we're wrong? And then the Sable Prince will be the one to be like, yep, it'd be terrible.
mm,
Like it's funny how in this conversation the flow or whoever's speaking of the three of them tends to align with like the point that they're making, in a really cool way. Like when they're
yeah.
talking about like good things or peace, it'll be the
Mm.
alabaster. When they're talking about like society and humans, that's when the aurum speaks up.
Mm, yeah, these three are very strange to me. You're right. I think it's the fact that they're unknowable that like that we just don't. The fact that they're so other, I guess, just it's very interesting. I still don't because we get more hints at like they're talking about the idea of judges and being judged and karma as their currency and all these things, and it doesn't. I just feel like I haven't quite like grokked how all the pieces fit together with these three. You know?
Yeah, I completely agree. Like it feels like we're missing some practical information on how to interact with them. And I think it's sort of funny how they like because there's that moment where Avery's like, "Oh yeah, I'd sort of better go," and you're like, "But couldn't you ask them like a million more questions?" Like you could imagine
Yeah.
if Verona was there, she'd be like, "Oh, hold on, like we're gonna get into the nitty gritty of how these three work." But there's this regality to them where they're
Mm,
just sort of they're sitting on their perch and they're like willing to have this audience with you. But the moment they're sort of like, yeah, Avery, it's probably time for you to go. She's like, yeah, okay.
yeah, I mean, I had the same vibe where I was like, there must be more to discuss here, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what it would be. Like, I don't know. I just had the same thought of like, yeah, okay, I mean, that's it.
Yeah, it was like, okay, I guess this is ending. But like, yeah, my thought was I could sit here for hours and be like, okay, so is this in your domain? Is this in your domain?
I feel like they would get a bit annoyed with you
Oh yeah,
asking questions
I'd
about
get
their
kicked out for sure.
particulars. Uh,
Me and Verona would get kicked out of there for asking them a bunch of questions like that.
yeah. Anywho, so uh okay, here's another thing I want to touch on actually. Something that Avery brings up is ways that they can like ensure that they're able to get back to Kennet, which I think is an
Yep.
interesting beat as we kind of move towards what seems to be a Blue Heron Institute part of the story. I'm just they're kind of worried about this, and I wanted to kind of get a temperature check from you because I was kind of like I didn't get the vibe that they wanted. I don't know. I wonder who would prevent them from coming back and like why, and also I kind of more get the sense that the real problem when they go to the Blue Heron Institute is I actually think they're not going to want to be that involved with Ken. I think they're going to want to just fall into that practitioner student lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not as unanimously. I think something that's going to happen, if we're heading to live in Alexander's school and he's the strife guy, I would expect a lot more inter Kenneteer fighting
Mm,
when they're there. And like, I could see that being part of it. Like, I don't see Avery or Lucy necessarily wanting to stay there that much, depending on how it goes. But like, I could absolutely picture a lot of scenarios where Verona's like, no, I want to stay here now, please. Um,
mm.
like I don't know, I could see Lucy and Avery being more tied to it by family, and then also by like not hating the place as much. Whereas like there's obviously situations where I could see them not wanting to go back to Kennet that you could construct, but Verona's the one where I'm like, God, you'd almost have to construct a reason for her to want to go back.
Mm, mm, yeah, I Verona is definitely the one I'm the most worried about for this, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
I
just
do just
another
yeah.
potential point of conflict if we end up doing a Blue Heron Institute arc, or because it's called the HBI in some bits, not the BHI. I don't know.
Mm.
I'm a bit confused about the name of it. I might just be missing something.
Isn't it? Is it referred to as the HBI? That might just be a typo. I'm pretty sure it's the Blue Heron Institute.
Okay.
Anyway, so Avery can't really think of anything else to ask the judges, and so the conversation kind of wraps up there. Um,
Yes. The last sort of detail we get here is they're like, "Oh, go say hi to John for us because we're going to nominate him at the end of the summer."
yeah.
Which again, it seems like we've done a bit of a time jump to be in the summer now because school's
Yes.
wrapping up and they're getting ready to go to the Blue Heron Institute.
Yep.
And then we're getting our sort of next deadline, which is like, okay, and then at the end of the summer, which is about when they're going to be coming back from summer school, that's when the shit's going to hit the fan. Like we've had that
Yeah.
set up since Arc 1. Like when this nomination happens, that's when moves have to be made.
Yeah, I was talking previously about in previous episodes about the idea that I didn't think we would get to see the Blue Heron Institute. That's obviously not the case anymore. Like we're
It
almost
seems pretty
certainly going.
likely that we're going to
Yes,
go there now. Yeah.
which makes me think now this is the end game of the story. Is it's going to wrap up by the time that John is nominated. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Maybe I'm just
It's funny on
arbitrarily.
Facebook. We were actually talking the other day after 3.Z came out, and I was like, with 3.Z revealing Yolda as the murder weapon, that actually I was like, I could see Arc 4 being the last one.
Yeah.
But then obviously Arc 4 started, and it's like, no, okay, we're adding a lot more to this
Yeah,
than like,
we've got more going on here than I thought. Which
yeah,
is, I mean, I've whenever we talked about the fact the story might wrap up before the Blue Heron Institute, I was a bit sad because I do want to see Warbo's Hogwarts, basically.
yes,
Um, so
same.
I'm not going to be too upset if we have two more arcs at the Blue Heron Institute that are kind of like just palling around at school, and then we get back to the story. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Like I know Wobbo's the sort of author to just like hop out of the story for 2 arcs and then come back and be like, now back to the Kennet shit. Like it will all intertwine. But I'm definitely super, super glad that we're gonna get part of this intertwining story happening at the BHI from the looks of it.
Mm,
Like at this
mm.
point it seems quite likely we're gonna end up there. But let's see how this party goes, I guess.
Yeah, we'll see. So yeah, Avery, with this interview wrapping up much more quickly than she thought, Avery wants to get home in time for the party, so she calls up a favor that she got from Zed, which is a trip home through Zoomtown.
I can't wait to get into this. But
Yes.
yeah, I mean it's interesting. So they made this deal with Zed, like they're going to trade him back his Achiwawa
Hmm.
tape in exchange for this, and yeah,
Yeah.
I mean this is the party time. Screw the actual party. This is the party.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on this. Just an interesting note. It's mentioned that Zed knew a city mage named Edward, one of the chains in the link that leads to these to Jude. I think the name of the character we meet in this chapter. And just the phrase "city mage" jumped out to me. Is that like a type of mage or just someone who lives in the city? I was kind of unsure.
I got the impression from the phrasing that it's a mage who deals with cities. because
Right.
otherwise you would just call them a mage in the city or
Right,
just a
and it
mage.
makes sense with Zoomtown, right? Because Zoomtown is like a magical city of sorts, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I, like
but
I,
the fact that that's a category is so wild to me.
Yeah, yeah, we're going to talk a lot about categories of others and practices in our extra material coming up, but this was definitely one where I was like, okay, so you're a mage who does cities. Like, what is that? Is there? I mean, I guess there would be spirits of cities, right? Like,
Mm,
where there's spirits of everything, I assume. So if there's like spirits of, like, I wonder if these are people who are like, oh, they're good at spirits of subways and skyscrapers,
mm,
or those might be a bit new. So is it like, does the city itself, like I could see there being like spirits of Sydney, right? Where like different parts of Sydney would have different energies and different types of spirits, and maybe it's just someone who specializes in knowing like what forces are strong in different parts of a city.
mm, mm. Yeah, yeah, interesting.
I mean, I personally, I City Mage might have jumped out to you, but the bit that jumped out to me was that there's a god parasite. Um,
Yeah, and Avery's like, "Oh, have fun with your parasite god,"
so,
and the
god
person's like,
parasite.
"No, no, god parasite." Like,
Actually, uh,
yeah, what does that mean?
wait, there's a book called The God Parasite that's like it's more talking about like the psychology of like why humans tend to lean towards the divine as a real thing. Like it's obviously not very applicable in the universe of Pale as a topic because it turns out that shit actually is real. But like yeah, is this some sort of what could a god parasite be? This feels to me like one of those things that's actually never going to come up in the story again, as Wildbow teasing us with world building in the background. Uh, but I hope I'm wrong because like god parasites sound like the craziest shit.
Mm, um, yeah. Is it so? Okay. Is it a god who is a parasite, or a parasite who is a god, or both?
Well, wouldn't a parasite god?
Be a god that is a parasite. That was my
Yeah,
thought too. So it's just a parasite that's also a god,
I don't know. I think it's a
or god
parasite that
of
feeds on
parasite.
gods.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. A parasite who feeds on gods. Okay, I can see it. It's just bizarre. I mean, no matter what permutation of the word phrase, it's obviously very enticing.
Yeah, all of them are equally interesting.
Yeah. So Avery does her little ritual and meets up with Jude in Zoomtown, and we get into Zoomtown, and wow, it's wild again, as all path-related things are.
I think what's fun though is like it's great even before we actually get there because like the ritual involves setting up a fucking Hot Wheels track around yourself and then stacking blocks on top of it and then
Yeah.
sitting there playing with the Hot Wheels car, going hustle and bustle, hustle and bustle, hustle and bustle, and like so just immediately I'm already like, okay, like what, because you try to piece together clues as to what the fuck's about to happen from this ritual. Like it's just such a fun. The fact that even the ritual is a fun part of the text to read is so great. It's not just in other stories it might be we cut away because Avery spends an hour like well to use another example like spreading ribbons around a room. It's like no, she has
Mm.
to sit there and play Hot Wheels to get in here. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, it's awesome.
I mean, I
I
wonder,
love
do you have
mm,
theories on what Zoomtown's sort of tapping into? Like, we sort of
yeah,
weren't in the Forest Ribbon Trail that it was pulling from these kinds of, not just the fairy tales like the Big Bad Wolf. Obviously, there is a
mm,
Big Bad Wolf in that one, but like,
yes.
it was tapping into these Alice in Wonderland, Majora's Mask type stories of getting lost in a wacky alternate world and having to escape. Um,
Mm,
but it also drew some of its like physical stuff, like the ribbons and stuff. I don't think the ribbons. I don't know if they were coming from a particular story or where that imagery came from. So I didn't know like how much weight to put in to the cars versus like the children's blocks and stuff to try and decide what this path might represent.
mm, yeah. I I was thinking about this. I think it gives me this vibe of like young children, like 5 to 6 years old level of children, kind of like the way that they play, the way that you have like blocks being smashed together and stuff like that. Plus the kinds of things where it's like, oh, you have to touch a blue house and then a yellow house and then a blue, or sorry, not a yellow house, a blue house,
No,
red house,
don't touch
blue
the
house.
yellow houses.
Yeah, it just felt very like the kind of arbitrary rules that a child will come up with when they're making up a game.
Yeah,
Um,
but there's lots of like you're jumping between rooftops. There's all these racing cars. The boons
yeah,
involved are like you become like a sick fucking
good
like
at
Fast and
driving or
Furious.
like yeah, exactly.
Um,
Which didn't quite make sense to me how
well,
that played.
I maybe like the Forest Ribbon Trail right wasn't coming all from one place. It's sort of these ideas that are interrelated, but not solid enough to become their own world, right? Like I see the
Yeah.
paths as these incarnate spaces that are so distant just because their ideas aren't as solidified as something like heaven or hell might be.
Yeah.
So I wonder if like maybe it is a mixture of like, because look, there are definitely people who view movies like Fast and the Furious as kind of childish in how not
Yeah.
intellectually challenging they can be. So maybe that's sort of the link. It's like tying these ideas of Hot Wheels and building blocks to like in
Like the
things like The
childish
Matrix
thing.
and Fast and the
Yeah.
Furious, how you have cars and jumps between buildings and stuff.
Yeah, especially the thing that especially makes this make sense to me is like obviously something that's so important in this world is the idea of belief, right?
Yeah,
And so it would make sense to me then that like children's imagination has this because it is so I guess powerful. I don't know if I'm
yeah,
wandering down cliches now, but that it makes sense that that would be a thing just because children are able to so effectively like disappear into their own worlds in a way that is much more tangible than what adults can do.
yeah. It's probably true. It's a good point.
Yeah, that's what makes it kind of line up to me. But I'm not sure. We're kind of just bullshitting, right?
Yeah, no, I'm kind of happy with this explanation of it as a place that's combining action movie tropes with like children's playing stuff
Mm,
imagery, because like I think that seems to fit. But I think it also ties into the rewards and the boons, because like so the reward is you become a Fast and Furious driver, but the drawbacks from that are like it gets harder to do it, which of course, you know, each Fast and the Furious movie is harder to make because you got to keep them interesting. Um,
mm,
and then like you get annoyed if you're not the one driving, which feels like something that's punishing a kid. Like, and that's sort of the link Avery brings up. Is she's like, I'm 13. I'm not going to get to drive for years, and now you're telling me
mm,
I'm going to be annoyed every time somebody has to drive me somewhere.
mm.
And then obviously, if you push it too far, you're going to crash and burn. Like it feels like it ties into all that stuff, and it's such a cool set. Like I even when we had the discussion question, and like Walbo submitted an answer to that one, and it was, you know, this like crazy thing. It's just like the rewards and drawbacks you get from these paths are like some of the highlights to make. It's just there's so much weird shit involved.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, yeah. So I want to touch on this note that you've left about prepping for the path stuff, right? Um,
Yeah.
so do you want to jump into that? Because I really want to dive into this.
Yeah, well, so something that sort of comes up is like Jude has come and he's fucking kitted out, right? Like he's got like oxygen tanks, all these sorts of other spare sets of clothes that cover all his skin. Um, like there's just he's kind of like there's a bit of a mini lecture mixed into this here of like Jude giving Avery some very like preparing for the paths 101 type stuff of like, you know, you should try and bring all this really versatile stuff, and it just makes me think like, what the fuck is this pathfinding stuff where it's like, oh yeah,
Mm.
make sure you bring an oxygen tank with you in case you end up somewhere where you need an oxygen tank.
Yeah, I loved this. I loved this when you brought this out because it made me think about it a bit more. And the fact that Jude is prepared for just absolutely wild things that could happen on the paths is so great. So, oxygen tank to me is like if you have a path that's underwater, that's going to be a whole thing. And having oxygen will clearly just make that so much easier. So, you kind of
Yeah,
always have to be prepared that you might end up underwater at a path, and that just could be a thing. Um,
maybe this is the like space sci-fi nerd in me, but I immediately went to like space because like clothes that have to cover all your skin and an
yeah.
oxygen tank to me was like, oh god, are you going to end up in some fucking Star Trek path?
Well, yeah. So protecting your eyes and ears, great. There's like bright or loud paths, cool. That makes sense. Protecting your skin was again very weird because I didn't jump to space. I just thought of like things where like if like a droplet of water or something gets onto your skin, it
Yeah, you
causes
are
like a permanent
lost.
effect. Exactly, which is again fucking wild. I love the path so much. It's my favorite thing that has been introduced into these stories.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like even the others that are in them, like we see one
Mhm.
here in Zoomtown, and she's got this moment where she like so she tries to trick Avery into like having empathy for her, and then it was like the second they leave, she's like, "Ha ha ha! ha, I almost got you," in this like overly maniacal villain kind of way. It's like such a 180. It's just like yeah, it's so hilarious. All the interactions, like there's just everything about the paths is such a fun creative exercise.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I do love them. Let's get into Zoomtown because it's such a perfect example of why the parts are so great. Avery begins to kind of navigate the rooftops of Zoomtown with Jude following behind, and it's so good. Like, so basically, in case I don't know, you didn't read the chapter or something, which is insane. It's a town of colorful houses that just kind of fly off into a hill and explode, and you're just kind of jumping along these, zooming past houses, and that's just like a thing. God,
And you're going like with them. Like I think that's the crazy thing
yes,
about it. Like I because the text had to specify that, which is good because I kind of assumed that she was like going against the direction they're traveling. It was like you've kind of got
yeah,
this inherent time limit because you're getting closer
to the
to
hill, yeah,
to the goal, like as you're sort of jumping. Yeah, I mean everything about it is insane. There's like this backdrop of like cars in fucking like doing stunts and races on the ground 10 floors below you as you jump between rooftops in low gravity. I can see why Avery gets to have the like Avery's kind of alternating between moments of like, oh dear god, fucking shit, and like, heck yeah, this is awesome. And like that was exactly the roller coaster ride I was going through of like when she was doing stuff, I was like, this is so cool. And then she like slipped and I'd be like, oh god, it's all over, we're all gonna die.
yeah, yeah.
But
Oh
of course,
God, it's so
Jude
fun.
maintains his calm, and he even finds that moment to be like, "Hey, do you have a boyfriend?"
Yeah,
Which,
I know, right? Which is insane. But also, do you think he's just like, because one of the things here is Avery notices a few times that he seems so calm. Do you think he's intentionally doing this just to like he can see that she's stressed out a bit and he's trying to like play it cool? I don't know.
nah, he's a 15-year-old boy. He's just a dumbass.
Fair
Um,
enough.
'Cause, like, I mean, I love Avery's reaction to this, which is just she's sort of like, "Really? Like now?
Yeah.
You think this is an appropriate time to ask me?" Um, I don't mean,
Yeah.
because like I think we've talked about this. I'm not sure if it was in Deep Impact or one of our pilots in these, but like people having arguments about like dumb and inconsequential things in the middle of high stress situations always
Yeah.
works for me as comedy.
It's
And
it's very fun, isn't it?
um, like it's basically the entire premise of Archer. Like I got through like 6 seasons of Archer, and like the only premise of that show is people doing exactly this. Um,
Yeah.
and so it worked great for me. I was just like, yeah, Jude, you fucking idiot. You know,
Yeah.
Avery's freaking out jumping between buildings, and he's like, "Hey, you're pretty good at this.
Hey, you wanna go on
You
a date?
single?" And
Yeah,
her
you wanna
response, like,
you
she sort of panics and she just shouts "gay" really loudly, which I thought
yeah.
was like a hilarious awkward teen moment.
Good on you, Avery. Yeah, classic. Another classic thing, while we're talking about classic things, is this woman other who basically just wants to trick Avery into trying to save her, and then when she almost does, she just kind of laughs at Avery as she sails off into the side of this hill. Oh, so good! Fucking
Yeah.
hell, I love the paths.
Yeah, me too, me too.
Um,
But, I mean, Avery eventually makes it. I love the moment where she makes it to the, like, archway and she, like, lies down and Snowdrop just recorporealizes to match her.
yeah.
Adorable.
Yeah. So Avery makes it to the goal, and with that, kind of gets back to Kennet, climbs up this ladder, and emerges onto a street in Kennet. And she's back, and
She
she
comes
meets up
out
with
of the
Lucy.
storm drain. Sorry, I just, like, what if somebody had been there? Like, and it's just this 13-year-old girl climbs out of the storm drain.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Anyway, yeah, meets up with Lucy, and they prepare to head to the party.
Yeah. And so obviously, like, we've got to touch on the fact, so Lucy was glamoured up to look like
Yes,
Avery.
to look like
Um,
it took me a
but
while because Avery talks about seeing herself, and it
yeah, and
took
I
me
was
a
like,
while
"Oh
to
god, is
figure out
this
what that actually
Marisica?"
was. Yeah, exactly.
I went into panic mode, and it's like, oh no, this was like a pre-planned thing with Lucy.
Yes.
Um, but Lucy has that one moment where she's like, "Oh, I was almost tempted to go to the party looking like you to see if I'm treated any differently," which like was a moment where I was like torn between like, oh yeah, like that'll teach him, mixed with like, oh, I don't know, this seems like a recipe for disaster, like a kind of class ranker. There's no way this can go well sort of situation.
Mm.
Like, I don't know, that just
Mm.
seemed like playing with fire to me.
Yes, for sure. It's definitely dangerous. It's definitely I don't know. I mean, it's not it's fine as a thing to happen, but it's not fine as potentially the first step down a path, right? Which I guess is
Yeah,
happens a lot in this story. So, Lucy's doing fine at the moment, but keep an eye on.
yeah. I mean, like again, we always sort of hit these moments where these three are just so good for each other. Um, and this is that bit like where Lucy is going to help Avery prep for the party. Avery's like, "Oh, I was just gonna put my hair in a ponytail," and Lucy's like, "No, no, we're gonna do better than that." And I was just like, "Oh, these three are so good for each other." Verona's off doing. I think they said, but I can't remember. I was just immediately my alarm bells are going off when Verona's left to her own devices to get ready
Mm,
for a social engagement in particular. Um,
mm,
yeah, like I'm just expecting Verona to fucking show up as a cat or some shit. I don't know.
mm.
Maybe a Hermione style cat from the Chamber of Secrets movie where she's half human, half cat. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. But like again, I love this. And like I think Avery takes a real moment to point out how much better Lucy looks in her clothes than her. So there's like,
Mm.
these three, they're just looking out for each other. It's nice.
Yeah, good on them. And yeah, I guess it's setting up that we're going to be going to this party in the next chapter or two.
Yeah. I'm sure it will be fine.
Yeah, the fact that we're going to the party, it makes me very excited because if we're gonna see it, you know something wild is gonna happen there, right? Like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
and it seems like we wouldn't be bigging it up this much if we didn't actually end up seeing it as a scene in the story.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be a scene in the story, something dramatic and crazy is going to happen there. And I'm just very excited for finding out what that's going to be.
Honestly, my money is on a class ranker situation. I reckon no magical shenanigans involved. This shit's gonna go
Yeah,
sideways just because people are shit,
yeah. I
especially
was thinking about
teenagers.
that. Like, is it going to be magical or non-magical? And I'm with you. I think it's going to be something uh, mundane, to use the
Yeah,
word, I guess.
the mundane world is horrible enough for shit to go sideways without magic.
Yeah, yeah. Right. So that's the end of 4.1. Let's dive into the bonus material, which is the Blue Heron Institute information packet, which opens with a letter from Alexander Belanger, basically describing how the school works. We learn about some of the teachers, the full-time teachers, who I think are Mrs. Durochet, Rad Ray, and Alex Belanger. They rhyme. That's great.
Yep.
And then guest teachers as well. And I'm excited. I hope there's some like other capital O other teacher. I don't know. We'll see.
I
But
wouldn't
yeah,
put my money on it at this at
no,
this
me neither.
stage,
It seems like others are in a different kind of class,
unless
and
there's some
that's
token other, you know?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you're right. Those three that we've already sort of met in 3.z seem to be the main ones. I'm super curious to see who else is in this sphere because, like, something that last week's extra material brought up is like, Ray to Zed was sort of like, oh, this is the reason we keep the school close, and we
Mm,
keep it as an asset for situations like 3.z. And so now he's listed as one of the teachers, and I'm like, okay, so he's not like teaching because it's his job or because he's got a passion for it, like which is usually the reason. Usually teachers are either, in it for the passion or depending on where you live, in it for the money. Ray's not, he's just in it for like the connections. And obviously we know Alexander is a piece of shit teacher.
mm,
Are there any teachers involved with this school who are actually like there for the right reasons or even give a shit if the kids come out of it well? Like it seems like everyone's just there because of the power it gives them as teachers.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. I wonder. It's weird. Like we've got Rad Ray, who seems fine, a bit rough around the edges, right? Based on what we heard in Zed's interlude. We've
Yeah.
got Alex, who's definitely
Yeah.
a psychopath, and then we've got Mrs. Durochet, and the impression I get of her is she's I don't know, she's got some messed up stuff under the surface at the very least, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't. We don't have anything to suggest she'll be a bad teacher, but just like
Yeah.
playing the odds, I don't think we have anything to really suggest she'll be a good one either, right?
Yeah, and so I'm like, what's going to happen? Is this going to be really messed up, this school? Because our first introduction to it was through the Bellangers and Nicolette, and that was like, oh, it's all fucked. And then we got introduced to Zed and Ray, and that seems to be the counterpoint of like, no, maybe there's some valuable stuff you can get out of this, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, because I like obviously with Nicolette scene, it was a bit different because it wasn't like it was physically at the school, but it wasn't during school hours, right? Like this was the people who live on campus.
mm,
Right, and it's like I went to a boarding school. I didn't board that much, but like
mm,
there was a very different tone of like there's the school versus like when you're living there. So
mm,
I can see like I can basically see it. Like Nicolette's was sort of the worst of the worst side of the school. And when you've got people like Ray and Zed there, like it's not all doom and gloom. There's people to balance out Alexander, but like just even who I would classify as the potentially cool teachers like Ray, it doesn't seem like he's into the school because he actually wants to part his information. He's there because it gives him a leg up in the world. And
Mm,
that sends alarm bells off of like,
mm.
how he's going to treat his students when
Yes,
push comes to
100%.
shove.
I mean, yeah, we've already seen how he treats his students, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, we kind of already touched on the fact that we previously didn't think we were going to go to school. It looks like we are going to go to school now. So,
Hell yeah.
anyway, to not rehash that, the next part of this bonus material is a big list of all the possible classes, and you have to cross out. Now, I don't quite understand this, Elliot. It says you have to cross out the ones you don't want to go to. Is that an option to not want to go to any of these classes? I can't imagine
Yeah,
that.
that was a completely alien concept to me.
Yeah.
The idea that you could read any of these and think, "Oh, that doesn't sound like something I'd want to learn." I think asking them to cross stuff out here might be the worst thing Alexander has ever done. Like,
Mm,
I could forgive the Nicolette stuff, but this is too far.
mm. Yeah, it's horrible. It's the worst thing he's done for sure. So okay, let's get into this course list because there's a lot in here, and it's
Yeah.
basically a hey, look at how much cool shit there is in this world list, right? And we also know it's not everything because there doesn't seem to be much about like the paths, for example, in this course list. So there's almost certainly a whole bunch of other shit in this world that is not covered here, and there's so much here, which just means this world is so packed full of awesome stuff.
Yeah, you're right. Like, there's so much that of this it's just like foundational, like things like spirits and like domains and implements and stuff.
Mm,
But as you said, like there's stuff that we've touched on in this story that aren't touched on here. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is presumably, they have to have an expert around to teach these things for the school.
mm.
It's so cool. Like just reading this list, I was just like, I love this world so much. And it's a shame to know that we can't just read 10 years worth of Pactverse stories, just going into all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like it reminds me of
Um,
there's like a Song of Ice and Fire like history book. So
mm,
like George R. R. Martin has like released side stuff that's basically just like a history textbook on the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, like Game of Thrones. And like he's said when he's been asked to comment on it, he sort of said it's funny because I have fans who know all the details, like they've memorized these books and they call me out when I make tiny mistakes. And I just wonder if those people have been as diligent about real world history textbooks.
mm.
And like reading this course list, I felt very called out by that old comment because it was like I would be so much more willing to read, like Wildbow could just write
Write a
like
textbook.
like
Yeah,
lecture
100%.
recordings
Yeah.
on these things, and it's like, I didn't go to every lecture when I was at university, but I don't think I'd miss Wildbow's lecture on the site, which is like
Yeah.
maybe I need to reevaluate some stuff if I'm more willing to go to this fake lecture on magic.
Fictional legends, yeah, definitely. Having said that, I also agree, and obviously the thing that this suggested to me is this course list actually, like, I got so invested into like I guess you'd call it career planning for what if I was a practitioner, um, and I wanted to ask the question of what you would pick, Elliot. What career of practicing you think you would go down now that you're looking at the university, set of courses?
God, I mean, I was bad enough at this at regular university. I wanted to sign up for everything. Well, okay, it sounds like you have ideas already, so I'm
Yes,
just
I
going to
did.
quickly read through. What are yours?
I was I started looking, and of course you want to go to all of them. So the way you have to answer this, I think, is what actual path of practicing would I want to go down? And looking through these courses, the one that really jumped out to me was all the stuff about magic items. I think I'd be really into magic items. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Zed and his 80s technomancy. And I don't know if it would necessarily be technomancy specifically, but just like crafting and dealing with magic items, I think would be so much fun. So
Yeah,
I loved all those ones, and also probably binding others. I think is a kind of general purpose thing that would be quite useful to understand.
yeah. There is like just going through it. There's like the list of others. They're sort of a category.
Yes.
And it's all like binding others, like categorizing them. Like it's very dehumanizing.
Hmm.
Which I'm sure will be something we sort of start to touch on. Um,
Yeah.
the ones that jumped out to me, and I hate to say it because like the Bill and Jays seem like pieces of shit, but like all the stuff around, like there's the category sight and seeing, and it's like astral projection using the sight,
Yeah. True.
remote viewing or augury type stuff, like that was what jumped out to me as like, oh, this would be my top priority.
But
Maybe some of the immaterial stuff, like there's
you
stuff
know that
on
means
visiting the ruins, the
oh yeah, that would
storm,
be cool. You can't
and
become an augur, Elliot, because then Alexander Belanger will be your head teacher, and
uh,
that's a nightmare.
look, if we're gonna pick practices based on whether or not I'd survive doing it for more than 5 minutes, I'm not left with many options. All right.
Mm, true.
Um, yeah, some of this stuff, like the other immaterial practices, stuff on like self and the soul, elementals, incarnations. Like that feels like the very fundamentals stuff that I could probably get into.
Mm,
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
I could just sit here all day and talk about like all the classes here and what they could be about and what I'd do in them. So let's not do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Anyway, so then
Oh,
this bonus
there's a
bit.
course. There's a course here on the ferry. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. No. Stop.
I know there's so much good shit in here, right? And that's not even mentioning all the like special interest courses that come up at the end that are all like absolutely wild. Anyway,
Compression
so
power, management of the uncontrolled. Okay, yeah, sorry. Sorry. Let's move
uh,
on.
and then this kind of bonus material ends with Verona, Lucy, and Avery discussing which courses they're interested in, and obviously Verona's eager for all of them, which is fair enough. And they
Yeah.
just kind of touch on.
I think we sort of touched on in our reflections episode with Jade how like I identify with Verona, and it's rarely more true than in this moment where Verona was like 110% to everything. I think the one disagreement we had is she was like, except history, like history is boring.
Yeah,
And I was like,
I
don't get me
think it.
wrong. Like, I
Yeah,
agree. Real life history, I found it was one of the least interesting subjects I had at school, particularly because
yeah,
Australian history is like
yeah,
nothing.
yeah.
But like, this is the history of magic. Like, I know history is boring, but like, how could it not be cool to learn about like how like magic evolved? You know, I don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was bizarre to me, Verona. Like, that's cool shit.
Yep. Yeah, I'm definitely on side with you there. Like, I guess the thing that maybe makes me agree with Verona is if I had to cut something, it would probably be history. Even though I would, if it was like take magical history or nothing, I'd be like, oh fuck yeah, like this is great. But
Yeah,
you can't if you can only do 4 classes a day. What's that? That's 20 classes tops if you're fully loading up your course load. I know I'm thinking about this too much for a fictional school, Ellie. It's so enticing. How can you not?
yeah, it's funny. You had that bit before where you were like, "Oh, what if they just don't want to leave?" And it's like reading this course list. Now I see what you were talking about. Like,
Huh?
Verona's going to do a month of classes. It's just going to be like, "Yeah, guys, listen. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Thank you. We got free tuition here. Like,
Yeah.
I'm staying."
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, this chapter ends with everyone logging off, and before Lucy's the last one there, and before Lucy logs off, she messages an empty room saying about Verona. I worry about you too. So much. Oh, sad.
Yeah, I mean, I, I mean, this moment is so great because there's a bit like Avery logs off, and this is set before, so this is when Avery is leaving to go talk to the judges.
Mm,
And she logs off, and then there's this bit where Lucy and Verona are like, oh, I do worry about her, like while I'm kind of talking about her in this caring way that mutual friends will do. And then yeah, and then Verona logs off, and Lucy sends that "I worry about you too" message, and then I think the program writes back, "Your last message was not sent. Nobody else is in this conversation," which just the sadness and melancholy of her writing that line is
mhm.
increased by 1,000-fold by just the program just reinforcing, hey, no one's listening to you right now.
Yeah,
It's
and
so
it's especially poignant because what it means is Lucy doesn't feel like she has somebody that she can talk to about this. So she's kind of just
yeah.
yelling it into the void, right? Like, fuck, that's tragic.
Of course, Lucy is the one who is saying this sort of stuff to the void. But yeah, absolutely. Like this is a brilliant little piece of writing here. This finale to this
Mm,
moment.
yeah.
Like all the cool
Um,
world building, if the class list aside, like this is great a great little piece of character writing that snuck in as well.
yeah, yeah. And that's the end of the chapters that we're discussing today. But don't go anywhere because we've got some more stuff coming up. Starting with some predictions from the community left in our Pale Predictor app, which you can get to by clicking the link down in the description. The community has left some predictions on what's going to happen, and I want to pull some of them out. I want to
Yeah.
start with this one, a prediction by Kirkistan, who made this prediction a few hours before this week's bonus material came out, and they said, I predict that the bonus material for Thursday, August 20th, 2020, will be a syllabus or course catalogue for the Blue Heron Institute.
Nailed it.
So, bang on, Kyrgyzstan. Congratulations. Great work. Well played.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much bang on.
Yeah. Did you
Yeah.
have a prediction you want to pull out?
Yeah, I pulled out one from Emerald Clef. And I actually sort of already talked about this earlier in the episode, but Emerald Clef is the one who suggested that Yolda might have been ordered to kill the Carmine Beast by the Masked Man,
Hmm?
and there's suggestions it was Charles. But Emerald Clef was the one who was like, maybe it was Marissa using glamour to look like Charles for whatever reason.
Hmm.
Which like it would be a funny twist because who'd wanna be Charles for a day, you know? Like he's actually the worst, according to Karma.
Yes, I love that. Like, we're very much positioned to just think it was Charles. Like, it
Yeah.
just like the universe hates him. We kind of hate him. It just is like perfect if it was Charles, which I'm sure that means it won't be. But I
Yeah,
just
well,
think it's
especially because if he's got this bad karma, that's meant to make bad stuff happen to him. Like the trail constantly pointing to him if he has bad karma
yeah,
seems
yeah,
like that sort of thing. Like
yeah, exactly.
people continually suggesting things that make it sound like Charles is exactly the sort of bullshit that I'd expect from someone with bad karma. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got to close this. I've just been reading this class
Of course,
list.
of course,
I got to
yeah, of
close
course.
it. There's one called
Uh,
Artificial Realms. It's about technomancy and ritually created. You got to do that one.
Yeah, of course. That would be Rad Ray's class. It'll be
Yeah.
great. Yeah, so something else to dive into is we got some great discussion answers to our discussion question in our discussion thread. God, that's a lot of discussion in last week. So the discussion question was, how do you think the Kenneteers or Kennet others could have handled things better? And we got a bunch of answers to this. I guess I'll pull out some of them. Some people didn't think that they could have done much better. There were a few that were kind of like small tweaks because obviously the Kenneteers and Kennet others are kind of in difficult positions. Um,
Yeah.
one one I thought was interesting was Grundux91 basically said if they were the Kenneteers, they might not have chased up the Carmine Beast stuff as much. Like when the Kenneteers were being introduced, it was very much, hey, we'll say that you're chasing this up, but you don't actually have to. And they obviously haven't really done that. They've kind of just gone front and center. But Grundux suggests maybe they could have just chillaxed a bit more and like learned about the world more first, even if they did eventually get into the Carmine Beast stuff, which I agree with in principle. But it also kind of assumes that whoever killed the Carmine Beast, that was just a one and done kind of murder. Whereas I think it's probably going to be a case that there's more of a conspiracy going on here, and so not looking into it just means you're going to be blindsided by whatever ends up happening. So
Yeah. I
yeah,
also like so the one sort of thing they had going for them, and the you know the height of the relationship with the Kennet others was when Miss was willing to sacrifice herself for them, which
yes.
frankly is something that I don't think has earned them enough points. But like without investigating the Carmine Beast and by just sitting back, they wouldn't have entered any situations where they've kind of proved themselves. Like, the bit with Zed, where they fought Zed with the goblins and John, that was the point that was brought up as like having earned them points. And that's not
Mm,
the sort of thing they might have been as involved with if they were taking this more backseat thing. Like, I think
mm,
actually getting out there and fighting with the Kennet others has often been the thing that's earned them the most points.
mm.
So I don't know. Like, I mean, hindsight's 2020, but
Yeah,
I think Grundux has some points, but then I can also counter argue it, which is probably true for every answer
yeah,
here. Like,
definitely.
there's so many ifs and ands.
Yes. One other one I quite liked was by a user called Lurking Beluga, who brought out that they don't think that either the Kenneteers or the Kennet others really handled Mrs. Departure very well, which I think we are all in agreement on.
Yeah.
The other thing they kind of pointed out was like, yes, there was time pressure, but they were like they knew Miss was leaving. It probably would have been worth it soliciting a bit of advice about like, hey, so how do we not fuck this up? You know?
Yeah, like not to blame Miss, but maybe she could have done a bit more to
To
pave
like
the way
set
for
things up
things to
to
not go
not
to shit.
fail. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good point. Yeah, it's like stuck in Reddit Factory kind of just brought up. Like basically all everyone needs to do here is just trust each other a bit more, but also they can't. But if they could, it would be so much nicer. Which is about the state of affairs in a nutshell.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, those are some of the discussion question answers that I really liked.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
we forgot to write a new discussion question, so I guess
Not
everyone gets
forgot,
the week
we're
off.
giving people a break from discussion questions so they can vote in the fan art contest. It's all intentional. Now, this is where our episode ends. Maybe.
Yes.
Because we're going to
Let's do
wrap up.
our outro, and
Yes.
then we'll move into back to packs.
Well, yeah, we're going to wrap up the show, but if you have listened to Pact, the previous story to this story, we'll have some Pact spoilers discussion after the episode. So
Mm.
stick around for that. But for
Yes,
those of
but
you who don't, stick around for the outro and then you can leave. Then you're allowed to.
yeah. So, without further ado, yeah,
Here it comes. Here
we
comes the
there'll
outro.
be
I'm so excited.
there'll be a link to the
So,
discussion thread in the
yes.
show notes below. So that's where you can leave your answers. Oh no, you can't.
No,
That's
no.
where you can just chat about the episode, chat about what courses you would do, the Blue Hair Institute. Just chat about these chapters in general.
Yeah, definitely. That will be linked in the show notes down below. If you want, why don't you leave this show a review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or whatever the heck that is nowadays? It helps people find the show, and that helps people find Wildbow's works, and that's always a good thing.
Yes. And if you want more content after listening to this episode and you're thinking this isn't enough doof podcasting for me, doofmedia.com is the website where you can find all the other doof podcasts for all your needs. We in the last few days actually hit our Patreon goal of 450 patrons,
Mhm.
which means that Matt and Scott have officially kicked off work on Explorators, which
Yes.
is something. So Matt is writing, and I think Scott is producing or something. It's like it's going to be an audio narrative. So
Yeah, just media's first original content, piece of original. Well, you know what I mean. Like
yeah, so they've just
original piece,
released
I guess, is
they've
how
they've
we
just
describe.
released a blurb for it, and it's like this cool like Star Trek style audio podcast thing. It's gonna be. It sounds awesome. I can't wait for it. So if you want
Yeah.
more details about that, if you want to help sort of see that through, head on over to patreon.com/doof media.
Yeah, definitely. And while you're on Patreon, why don't you check out Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/Wildbow? Because, of course, he is the one who created Pale and all these cool things like Zoomtown. So why don't you Zoomtown over to Wildbow's Patreon and leave him some money?
Whew. Yeah. So on that note, get out of here if you haven't listened to Pact and you don't want spoilers because we're gonna dive into that.
Yeah, let's go. Backed to Pact. All right, Elliot, what do we got?
I mean, there's actually a bunch of stuff to talk about from these last few chapters. I mean,
Yep.
obviously, 3.Z, we met a person. Eloise is clearly a douche, right?
Clearly a douche. She's a connection later. She got married. Like she's been a like surprise fiance. Yeah. The
Also,
Duchamps are well and truly alive.
yeah, I mean, they were described as the family of pretty cockroaches, which I think I saw a bunch of people the second they read that they were like, "Oh, these fuckers, they're still here."
Yeah,
Like, of course, the Duchamps made it out of Jacob's Bell. I'm kind of sad because I don't think Pale will go into that because like that might be too packed territory.
exactly.
Like to actually even name the family, I think would be a bit much. But
Yeah.
I would love to get the details on the story of how these fuckers managed to like settle back into doing this same bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I would also love to see that. um, well, I mean, yeah. We also we get these a bit more beats about something that I found really interesting, which was about the Hungry Choir going to visit ghost towns. Zed talks about how practitioners will go to like clean up places where things have happened, and I think that's 100% happening or happened to Jay's B in the
Yeah.
sense of we saw that in the epilogue in Pact. I 100%
Yep.
think something very similar that's going on there, which I think is just a fun little note for those of you who are Pact readers.
Yeah, I absolutely made the same connection. I was like, "Oh, this is what Jacob's Bell is kind of like now."
Yeah.
Like if the Hungry Choir had gone that far and grew that much, I honestly wouldn't have been surprised to learn that Jacob's Bell was one of the towns it was going to.
Mm. Yeah.
We also get there's a couple of mentions of the Abyss recently in the story. In fact, Avery says she would like to go to the Abyss, and she asks Jude if the Abyss is like the ruins, which
Uh,
kind of stumps Jude. He's just like,
no.
um, I
No.
mean, I like it was funny. Like my reaction to this was like, there's that part of me that's like, oh no, Avery, don't do it. And then of course the other part of me was like, yeah, let's do this again. Wait, the Abyss, it's so much fun. I'm fucking ready to dive back into that bullshit.
Yeah, what if we see the witch? What's her name? I've forgotten the witch's name now. But what if we see the
Oh,
witch again? That would be so great.
oh god, what is her name? And they went and visited her thing in the
Maybe her
epilogue.
name has been forgotten to time. It's been taken away from
Yeah.
her, and so we'll never know it. Been edited
um,
out of Pact.
yeah. I mean, I think there were quite a few fun little Easter eggs of stuff in this 4.1 extra material as well. Like, there's a counter diabolism course, which is
Yes,
like
totally.
I don't
When
think
you
Pale
when
is gonna.
Granny Thorman comes in and 6 demons on you.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone gets quite as harsh a go at that
What
as
if
Laird and Alistair did. But
Rose Junior or Rose Senior potentially is one of
yeah.
the guest lecturers? Wouldn't that be great?
I
Oh,
wouldn't. Yeah, it's because Rose is almost more of a scourge now. She'd be Avery's tutor, maybe more
true,
than.
true.
Although she obviously has a working knowledge of diabolism. Um,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, but like I don't think this story will really go into diabolism.
No,
Um, just
it's been covered ground, right?
yeah, but like I think like I that's why I thought that was like a very fun little Easter egg of like in the course list, just seeing counter diabolism and thinking, oh yep, of course, couldn't
Yeah.
have a practitioner score without hating on diabolism for a bit.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah. Good stuff. I love how, like, with this course list, the world has expanded so much, and yet there still feels like there's so much space for stories in this universe. Like, it's
yeah,
so
like
great. It's my favorite of Wildbow's universe. It's just because there's so much potential for awesome shit in here.
yeah, like we weren't really able to name specifics, but like that course list didn't include anything about like chronomancy, like as an
Yeah,
example of stuff that's just not even being touched
yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Fuck,
I mean,
so cool.
like I think that's the thing as well. Like I imagine because obviously Pale and Pact have both been set in like one part of Canada,
Yeah,
and I imagine that's sort of because the magic of this world is so based on the culture and the beliefs of a place that like I think it's sort of the area Wildbow's from. Or like he's from Canada, right? So
yeah.
it's sort of
He can kind of,
yeah, you
yeah,
write the stories there just because like he knows it. Like
yeah.
it'd
It's
be
so
weird.
important to have the cultural knowledge of things for this kind of
Yeah,
story.
like you couldn't dive as deeply in a culture that you hadn't spent as much time with.
Mm.
Like I think you could probably get away with doing an Australian one because it's like 99% the same. Like both,
He
both.
can and should do a story set in
um,
the down under of the
yeah,
Packverse.
but like I mean, I think yeah, like to your point, this is the thing, right? Like we've had these two stories or a story and a half so far, and they're both just set in like this part of Canada. But there's so much more to this world. Like you could just pick up and hop on over to Australia, and have like stories that don't even touch on what's going on in Canada.
Yeah,
Never mind getting into places that are completely foreign sort of cultures. And ones that have sort of been less influenced by the West. It's just so much to this world. So cool.
yeah, yeah. Anything else that we want to touch on for going back to Pact?
Well, I suppose while we've got our arsenal of pact knowledge, do you have any more insight into where you think Lucy and Verona might be going as practitioners? Like, obviously, Avery seems pretty set on being a finder, which seems new in this story to me, unless I'm forgetting something.
Yeah, I know. I think it is. I don't really. I think Verona's interesting in that if she doesn't become an other, she could become something like a host, or just she seems to just care about everything, and so maybe like dabbling is what she's going to end up
Yeah, a bit
doing.
more of a shaman slash dabbler.
Yeah, but for Lucy, I have no clue what she's going to
Yeah,
do.
okay, good. So it's not just me. Like, so that's fine. Yeah, I'm very interested to see where.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got the course list back up. I closed it, I did, but then
You
I reopened
fool.
it.
All right, we can wrap this show up so Elliot can get back to studying his course list.
No, there's ones in here. Like, there's stuff that touches on the Seal of Solomon, which we obviously know a lot less about in Pale than we did in
Yes.
Pact.
Yeah.
But there's also the Oni Accords
Mm.
listed next to the Seal of Solomon as like,
Presumably like the Japanese version of the Seal of
yeah,
Solomon.
and because we learned that they have a completely different system for familiars, so that's just so cool.
Yeah, and Japan, I think, has its own kind of set of these like is influenced by Christian and Buddhist, but also kind of like Shinto belief structures that I think would quite
Yeah.
differentiate. Never to not to mention the fact that Japan has like fucking yokai and all these other like really very specific
Well, it's
ghost
all a lot
stories.
more like Eastern stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anywho, is that the end of our show? Do we have anything else
Yeah.
to
Although
discuss
we
here?
we don't really have an outro now. This happens every time we do back to back. We just sort of have to say, and that's
See you
that.
next time.